and welcome to the Good Girls Society, the podcast where we, Jen and Sass, talk about all things bookish, lifestyle, and navigating life in your 30s. Don't forget to give us a follow on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at good.girls.pod. And be sure to follow us here on all our streaming services so you can listen to our latest episodes as well.
On today's episode, we are diving into S.D. Gibson's sexy new release and Education in Malice. But before we get into the book, how's life, Jen? Tell me what's been going on.
It's good. Not too much has been going on, just working and trying to just finish out the school year. You know, it's the end of the year. It's always a little bit rough, but we're pushing through. The big thing is I am moving at the end of the month. So I somehow have to pack up all of my stuff and I haven't started yet because, like usual, I don't know where to begin. So,
overwhelming.
Yes, very much so.
That's annoying.
What about you? What's new?
What is new? Not a lot, to be honest. I've been keeping my head down, doing my cosplay, reading a lot. I've been having a very, peaceful month. I feel like lots has happened. I think we had a Pisces new moon, and it made everyone go a bit insane. I noticed a lot of, relationships around me imploding and a lot of things happening, friendship-wise this month. So, for, everyone around me, it seemed like it was a really turbulent month. But I just kind of, tried to stick to my, reading, cosplaying, staying out of trouble.
Yeah. It's hard. It's hard to stay out of trouble, especially for us. So.
Right.
Aries and a Gemini trying to stay out of trouble.
Literally, it's always the air signs and the fire signs, isn't it? You never have to worry about the air signs.
Nope. No, you do not. It's just us all the time.
All right. Well, tell me the trigger warnings for today's episode.
So this one's got quite a long list, just like all of our other books. I don't know why anyone's surprised by now. Maybe nobody is, but An Education in Malice contains the following trigger warnings, which we may discuss in today's episode. So if you are triggered by any of these, please make sure that you just know that they may be brought up in this episode and stop listening just in case. The trigger warnings are uneven power dynamics, inappropriate relationships between professor and student, toxic academic environments, blood, gore, and murder, consensual sexual content, including public sex, kink, negotiated and spontaneous, alcohol and drug use, smoking, racist political policies, homophobia, and religious discrimination against women.
All right. So this book is a modern dark academia spin on the original Sapphic vampire novel Carmilla. If you weren't aware, the story of Carmilla and Laura was released at least 100 years before Dracula and was originally a story created to ward women off homosexuality. Joke's on them because it's become one of the most famous Sapphic love stories. The original story is quite sad and it is slightly insane, so if you're looking for a less homophobic version, Carmilla and Laura by S.D. Simper is my recommendation to you. It has a really fluffy ending and it's definitely not homophobic. The author is queer and they are lovely. An Education in Malice is set in 1960s Massachusetts at the prestigious St. Perpetua's College for Girls. Can we just talk about the fact that it's an all-girls college? As if this isn't a Sapphic dream.
It is wonderful and perfect. It is perfect. Absolutely perfect.
With the college's Gothic architecture, seemingly endless wings to discover, and terribly dreary weather, you're immediately transported to another realm. One thing I loved about this book was the aesthetics and the time taken to describe the architecture, fashion, and general vibes within this book. I felt like I was set up for an enjoyable experience regardless of the storyline. Think 1960s miniskirts and tights with cashmere sweaters, trips to the library to discover vintage erotica, because it wasn't quite as easy to obtain porn in the 1960s, and to flamboyant professors who act like they're from another time entirely.
I loved it. I just want to say, The architecture was flawless. Gothic architecture and just Gothic stories in general, I forgot how much I loved them. Like,
Yeah.
I know we're going to talk about it, but I just had to put that in there because I forgot how much I love a Gothic story. And this just reminded me of it. And now that's all I want to read again is like Gothic stories because I loved it.
Yeah, I agree. It definitely, I felt like as soon as I picked the book up, it was like a movie playing in my head, which doesn't always happen for me. Sometimes I'll read a book and be like, ah. Like when I was reading House of Flame and Shadow, I really struggled to like picture anything. It felt so disjointed. Something I think S.T. Gibson does really, really well is the aesthetics of a book and making you feel as if you're in it based on the aesthetics. So I would definitely say if you're someone who likes vibes about books, you will really, really enjoy the setup of this book.
So we are introduced to the characters through Laura Sheridan's eyes. Laura moved from Florida to attend the college, and we discovered her love for poetry. In her initiation, which is a bonfire that all the girls on campus attend, we are introduced to the beautiful and enigmatic Carmilla, where we feel Laura's instant attraction. It is very obvious from the beginning that Laura is completely smitten with her. The attraction quickly turns to rivalry when Laura is accepted into Miss Delafonte's poetry class. Carmilla, in her eccentric costumes, continuously attempts to undermine Laura through poetry, appearing to fight for her professor's adoration. This is a dual POV book, so while we feel this deep attraction and confusion from Laura, from Carmilla, we feel rage and jealousy. Carmilla is one of those characters who might make you do a 180 in terms of how you feel about her, but she may also enrage you throughout this entire book.
Can I ask, did she enrage you for the entire book, or were you swayed?
Yes and no. So I kind of loved her. But I always love those characters. Like I relate to those characters, to be honest, like the ones that like fight for the attention and like crave it. And like I used to be called needy growing up. So like I was that character that like would fight for the attention. And like, if I found that adult that like gave me that attention, like I would do everything in my power to keep it too. So like there was a lot to her that I related to. But there was also a lot about her that did annoy me as well. So I was like back and forth with it. Because like I could see myself. So then at the same time, I was like, oh, I used to do that. Like that was me. Like, you know, so it was almost like a, oh, kind of a feeling. Like, oh, that was me. I would have done something like that back then.
For sure. I think she definitely had her moments. When we first meet her, I think the allure of her for me was how eccentric she was, and like the way that S.T. Gibson set up her character to be so eccentric and wear these like costumes basically. Like so she was wearing like flounce tops and like knickerbockers instead of, I just imagined her character walking into the drama theatre, finding the Victorian outfits and wearing them to class. So
yeah,
I think like from an aesthetics point of view, she was so well fleshed out in who she was and how she showed her flair and I guess in a sense her insecurities through her costumes. So I really, really loved her character in terms of her aesthetics and how we got to learn about her through aesthetics. I think again that's something that this author does really well, is just like provides you with such a well-rounded aesthetic version of something, and sometimes you may be able to interpret that yourself, which I also really like. I like when we're left to interpret things about a character through untold things, like descriptions of people and why she may do what she does.
absolutely. Well, especially with the costumes, like any type of attention is good attention. So wearing those types of outfits, she's going to get the attention she wants. So even if it's negative attention, like why are you wearing something like that? It's still attention that she's craving because she never had that growing up. Like her mother left her mother abandoned her, and she had that hole that Delafonte ended up fulfilling, and any attention she wanted. So like it was just so, like you said, perfectly executed and just flawless in that.
Yeah, and so when I was looking through reviews, I did notice a lot of people say that there just wasn't enough character development. And I think to those people, I would argue that the development of the characters comes through in these subtleties, like how they dress and how they act towards each other. And I think you do have to read a little bit between the lines with this author, which I loved. Now, Delafontaine was a really interesting character. So this is the professor. So we've got Laura and Carmilla, who are both students, and then we've got Delafontaine, who is the other, I guess, main character. And we find out through the story that she is a vampire. And like that, I wasn't that surprised, because I remember texting you like when I just started the book, and I was like, oh, their names are Carmilla and Laura. This is going to be a Carmilla and Laura retelling. Okay. So I kind of knew there was going to be a vampire, and then I kind of guessed it from the inappropriate relationship that Carmilla and Delafontaine had. But what I found was that I never grew to like Delafontaine at any point, even when at the end she left them. Like I loathed her character for so many reasons. Like generally just her being so much older than both of them and still having this really inappropriate relationship with both of them, that not only was inappropriate because she was a professor and they were her students, but because of the way she treated both of them and tried to pit them against each other for so long.
Right.
And the way that she'd like used Carmilla as her protege, or whatever you want to call it, but then had used Laura as like, I don't know, her food source. I was like, fuck you. Yeah. The entire time I was like, fuck you. Worst character ever. But I must say, I'm also like not a fan of like big age gaps. I don't like student professor dynamics that much. It's not really my favorite thing. So maybe that's why I also loathed her, because I don't like that power dynamic. I think it's
so as a teacher, I'm always very leery about that, reading books. So I was kind of like, I was already hesitant going in, because I was like, this usually isn't my cup of tea. Like I try to avoid that at all costs. But I do like that we didn't see too much of it. Like it wasn't like a hyper focused like sexual thing with the two of them. So I was able to get, because I think if it was more focused on that, I don't think I would have been able to finish the book, just because of being a teacher. So thankfully, because that wasn't like that, I was able to finish it so that I could actually enjoy it. But no, I agree. I hated her from the beginning. And I think that also stems from my experiences in relating to Carmilla as well, because she knew that whole time how Carmilla was from the very beginning, and she exploited that to the extreme. And it only got worse the second Laura came into the picture and did everything in her power to exploit her. And then when we find out about Isis, it's almost like you did the same thing. Like, how dare you like talk and complain about her when you're literally doing the same thing again? Like,
it's ridiculous.
It's just like, it blew my mind. And I grew a little bit of respect for her at the end when she left, but never at any point did I like this character.
Yeah. I thought it was such an interesting shift as well, watching through the storyline, how Carmilla started to change as she grew as a vampire. I thought that was interesting too.
Yeah.
What would you rate the characters out of 5?
I would say a 4.
Yeah. I would say 4. I thought they were really well developed.
Definitely well developed. I liked them a lot. There were some characters I wish were a little bit more fleshed out, in the sense of like minor characters. Like I wish we got a little bit more of like the friend that she went home with at Christmas, and like little things like that. I wish we just got a little bit more of like the other characters in the story than we did. But the 3 main characters, I really, really liked how much those were fleshed out. And I think she did a really, really great job with those.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, so, but before I start mapping out reviews, like whenever we do our reviews, I really like to read and watch other people's reviews so that I can take other people's opinions into consideration. Sometimes I agree, and sometimes I'm like, well, do we read the same book? Which is not a bad thing. Obviously, everyone interprets things differently. But what I noticed about the reviews of this book is that a lot of people were really reading this book for the aesthetics and they weren't reading it for the plot. So, like, I am of the opinion that the plot was really good. I enjoyed the book. I enjoyed the plot. But I can see how people would find this book more pleasing just aesthetically. And, like, if you're really wanting a gothic sort of sapphic vampire romance, a dark academia vibe, then obviously this is definitely going to be the book for you. But I found there was so much more to it. What did you think? Did you think it was more just about the aesthetics?
No, there's definitely more to it than that. I mean, the aesthetics were phenomenal. But there's definitely more to it because you have that underlying tone of like the psychology aspect of it where you have all of Carmilla's insecurities and you have like Lafontaine who is literally exploiting every single one of them. And then you have like Laura who's helping her grow and move through them without even really realizing it, without Carmilla even realizing it. So I think there's definitely more than just that, but I think that that definitely helped it. So if that's what you're looking for going into it, then absolutely you're going to love it. But there's definitely more to it. I did feel though that like the storyline moved slow at certain parts, which did lower my rating just a tiny bit overall, but I still loved it. Even at the slow parts, I still loved it. So
so we meet the professor. Laura begins to fall for Carmilla. Lafontaine brings Laura into their fucked up relationship by inviting her over to a private poetry club at her house. Like, how much more sketch can this woman be? I hate her.
I just also don't understand how, like, nobody knew this. Like, how did nobody know about this?
No one was like, this is a bit inappropriate, guys.
Where are you going?
What are you doing late at night?
You just read poetry and get drunk and come home? Like, what are you doing?
Now, Carmilla, I think, became more and more insufferable. I think Carmilla as a human was one of the most insufferable people I've ever met. And that's not a bad thing. Great character. Don't get me wrong. Her character was amazing. But while still a human and competing for Lafontaine's love and affection and, what's the other word I'm looking for? Acceptance. I just found her to be so insufferable. And from her point of view as well, I think it was really sad that we didn't see... Well, I think it was also that Carmilla didn't know she was falling for Laura. So she's thinking of her as, like, this enemy and treating her as such and loathing her so much, while Laura is secretly, like, falling in love and... like, fantasizing about this girl. So I did find that part of the story really painful because I was like, oh, Laura, poor thing. Now, Carmilla and Laura attend a Halloween party together where Laura finally kisses Carmilla and expresses kind of her true feelings, I guess, because Laura has a lot of angst. And this is something that I also loved about Laura, is that she's this God-fearing girl who's been brought up in a religious family, and, you know, she's got a big family. Her mum's dead, her dad looks after everyone, and then she says, like, he's a lawyer or whatever, he's a solicitor,
something like that.
She comes from a bit of money, but because there's a lot of them, there's not a lot of, like, love and affection. So she sort of grows up knowing that she's gay. She knows that she doesn't like men, and yet she spends all her time with erotica and reading and poetry and falls in love with that rather than falling into the arms of people. So, like,
which was one of the best scenes in the whole book, I will say, was when they were both in the library.
Oh, yes!
And Carmilla catches her with the pamphlet, and the tension between the two in that scene, I was like, okay, hello.
It was so good. That definitely was one of the best scenes because you feel that tension from Laura and that seething hate that we later find out is actually somewhat her feelings for Laura. and it's so good. So they express their kind of true feelings. They kiss at this Halloween party, and then of course, who ruins it all? Lafontaine steps out of the fucking shadows from wherever she's been creeping and watching them, like the freak she is. This is a professor. Anyways, and then leads
chaperone. Yeah, okay.
Chaperone freak.
Mm-hmm.
So then she leads them down some dingy tunnels beneath the school to find Lafontaine's true love, which happens to be another vampire, whose name is Isis, and she's decaying, like the fucking crypt keeper. I hate Isis.
Worst. I didn't think it could get worse than Lafontaine, but you can. We were wrong.
We were so wrong. Because so wrong. Isis, and you're like, what the... I'm not calling her Isis anymore. Her name is the Crypt Keeper from...
The Crypt Keeper.
Fucking Crypt Keeper. So, then Lafontaine makes Laura give the Crypt Keeper her blood, thinking that was going to be a sound idea. This vampire who's decaying because she's gone into what was it called? Oh god, I can't even remember. But basically she hasn't fed, she doesn't want to see the world. She's sleeping through it all because she doesn't like what's happened to the world.
Yeah. There's some magic thing happening.
Yeah. And then is she not going to be hungry and feral as if you bring those two
Apparently not.
girls?
Apparently we didn't think about that ahead of time.
Clearly not. I mean, it's giving Lafontaine. I've got it. The Crypt Keeper and cunt. That's what I'm going to call Lafontaine.
Perfect. Love that.
For my non-Australian people, cunt is a very normalized word here. We don't use it as sparingly as my friends in the US, and sometimes we say it as a term of endearment. So I will just say, I'm sorry if that shocks you. It's very normal here. Now, after Carmilla gives her blood to Isis then goes and rips out her fucking throat, and Carmilla's dying on the floor, and I was like, oh shit, is this it? Are we now... We're 40% of the way through the book, and Carmilla's...
And I honestly thought that that was the plan. I really hated Lafontaine and had no faith in her so much. I thought that was her plan.
Yeah.
So that she was just going to kill Carmilla. And I was like...
And then I was like, is Laura, what's going to happen to her? That part really spun me out, hey?
Mm-hmm.
Really got me. So, of course, Lafontaine saves her by letting her drink her blood, and then Carmilla turns into a vampire. And because Laura's witnessed it all, she's now a part of their fucked up little crew. Lafontaine needs to fuck off.
It's a happy little party, okay? Let them have their party. Their blood party.
Their fucked up little Crypt Keeper cunt party. So then we lose Isis after this. Isis stays under the school. She doesn't come and then socialize, but what we notice is that girls start dying on campus. And we know it's Isis, because who else is it going to be?
But then the brat has the audacity to blame Carmilla.
Right.
No, she was a little busy in the lake.
Yeah, the lake. The lake! We'll get into that in the spice part of this book, guys, don't worry. We'll talk to you about the lake, because I'm sure a lot of you who've read this book want to discuss the lake, like I do.
Oh, yeah.
Now, I feel like this is when the plot started plotting, and when I say plot, I mean sex. So Lafontaine takes the girly pops to a sex party.
Oh my god, it was so fun.
Again, so appropriate for a professor to be taking two girls to a sex party. A vampire sex party, I should say.
Yep.
Now, it's at this, mega vampire Magdalena's house. So we get to meet Maggie, old Maggie. I actually loved Magdalena. I thought she was sick.
I loved her.
She seemed like such a slayer.
And she's another character that I would have liked more for.
I feel like you could definitely do make this a duet and then do the next part of their story, because S.T. Gibson left it so unfinished, which again, we'll talk about in a second. But I definitely think she left this book so open for so much more, and especially because we don't know a lot about this major vampire Magdalena, there's this opportunity now to do that. Let's talk about that in a second. But can I just say, based on based on the description, it sounds like Laura squirted. Like she squirted all over Magdalena's duvet.
Oh yeah, 100%.
I read that like, oh, sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Like, sorry for squirting all over.
But let me say, for a shy little Christian girl, that girl can get dominant.
She was freaky. And like the way she even said, like throughout the book, I think that was one of my favorite parts, is like Laura is warring with herself about how sexual she is and how much she wants to dominate women and punish them. Like, that was so much fun to read, and then to watch her live out that fantasy. And, you know, even in this section, it is when she starts to get a bit dominant, but then she, like, freaks herself out and she stops, and you're like, no, keep going, you've got this, girl. Now, I think after that sex scene and, you know, all the development that happens through that part of the story, Carmilla starts to warm to Laura, and this is when she realizes that she actually really loves Laura. And then we start to notice this subtle but very clear shift in how Carmilla feels towards Lafontaine. She even thinks things like, don't leave me with her. And she's talking to Carmilla, she's like, don't leave me with her. And you're like, oh, you really... I don't know.
And she's like half asleep too. Like, it's not...
It's sad.
Yeah.
That honestly was so sad. I feel like if you made this book longer, you could have made that whole dynamic way more intense and horrible.
Absolutely.
Have you started reading A Dowry of Blood?
I have not yet. No, I just came today.
So
Don't get me started.
I'm about 80% through, and what you don't get in this book about that storyline...
Don't get me started.
Don't show that on screen. Guys,
I got a bone. I got a bone to pick.
If you're listening but not looking, Jen is showing us An Education of Malice and A Dowry of Blood, the books, the physical books, and her Dowry of Blood is very small in comparison to her Education of Malice book.
And it makes me so sad. How am I supposed to put these on a bookshelf next to each other?
You actually can't. You have to burn them. That's it.
I have OCD.
It's foul. It's giving foul. It's giving Lafontaine. That's Lafontaine symbolized. The worst. But yeah, so what you don't get in terms of like how horrible Lafontaine is, you definitely get that in A Dowry of Blood. So if you guys are looking to see more of that kind of vampire relationship, I promise you'll get it in A Dowry of Blood. So the bond between Carmilla and Laura does deepen, and they do fall in love, and they do tell each other that they love each other in a really rushed and cute way, which I think we'll talk about when we talk about Spice. Now again, the Crypt Keeper is gallivanting around, killing girls, so you've got this ominous and overwhelming feeling of danger while reading this part of the book. So, you know, Massachusetts, rainy, gothic, girls are getting killed on campus. It's spooky. I liked it. It was great. Laura then goes to San Francisco for Thanksgiving with her friend. I forgot her friend's name, and I feel really bad about it because her friend was sick. She was cool.
I know, and that's what I mean. Like, I wish she was more fleshed out because I can't even, like, remember her.
Yeah, I can't remember her.
It's like Eleanor? Is that?
Oh, yeah, maybe it is.
Or is that the one that died? It's not the one that died. It's the other one. Because isn't it the one that came up to them in the, in the bar?
Eleanor, yeah.
Is that who it is? It's Eleanor?
Yeah.
Yeah. Have a dozen or more to get Eleanor's home number.
I loved Eleanor. She was cool. She had like a very cool vibe to her. Okay. Back to it. So she goes to San Francisco, and then Carmilla calls her and is all sooky. And then Lafontaine comes home and she's like, gotta go. Just hangs up the phone.
Right. Like,
awful. Then, so Laura comes back, then they find that Lafontaine is actually meeting with Isis under the school, and you hear some like fucked up conversation about her having to kill someone, and you're like, wait, Isis, who are you asking her to kill? And now you've got this ominous feeling that Isis is about to kill either Carmilla or Laura, and it's awful.
See, I knew it was Carmilla from the beginning.
Ugh, it was so creepy. It made me feel gross. They finally lure the Crypt Keeper, and then she gets beheaded, right? They cut her head off.
Yes.
Good.
But even that, like, I knew because they talked about Laura and, like, Laura had this plan. But even that, I was like, is this still part of the plan? Like, I really, really, for a second, believed that Lafontaine, like, was straying from the plan and, like, was going to give her up. Because I had no faith in this woman. Like, no faith whatsoever.
She was very dodgy. She was very dodgy. So, cool. Crypt Keeper is dead. No more scary times. Lafontaine skips town. Good riddance, you old cunt. I've literally said that in my notes. And Carmilla goes to stay with Magdalena. Boss bitch.
Yes. Which, yes, please. I hope there's a second book, and I hope that we get that, because I want that, because also, like, the ending.
What was with the ending? Like, I loved it, because I think, like most of this book, a lot of it was left up to your interpretation. There was so much in this book that you could interpret from description she gave you. And that ending, so basically for all the listeners who...
Wait. If you did not read this book, at this point, just skip, like, 2 or 3 minutes. Just skip it, okay?
We're going to deep dive.
We're going to talk about it because we need to. So just skip the next, like, 3 to 5 minutes, just to be safe.
All right. So Magdalena... What I really liked was that she gave Laura the choice, and she was like, you can come either way. You can be with us either way. You're not cast out if you don't decide to become a vampire. But she opened her vein for her and was like, here you go. Here's my blood.
Put it in a cup and walked away. Like, but then, like, did she drink it? Like,
from what she said at the end, it felt like she did. So
that's how I interpreted it too, because it definitely felt like she wanted to. But at the same time, I'm like, just tell me, like, those things go over my head. You gotta just, like, specifically tell me.
No,
but I liked that, because then at the same time, it's like, you can give me a second book now and tell me all about their, like, cool little sexual escapades wherever these people go. Like, I want to know about these cool parties and this lavish lifestyle that this woman is now living with them. Like,
like are they gonna go to Europe and have a great time as vampires? So I'm gonna read the last little paragraph again, because it stuck with me. So, no more Laura the Saint, I thought. No more Laura the scared little girl. I was Laura the night creature now, regardless of what path I chose to take. I looked down at the blood one more time, running my tongue over my lips. Outside, a new day dawned crimson and clear. It felt very much like it was heading towards her choosing that vampire life. But I think if we got a second book, there's so much we could explore there.
Absolutely. So the one thing I said I wanted to talk about, and I didn't, was the dedication, because the dedication of this book, man, I just, like, kept looking at it. So it says, for those of you who didn't make it out of the ivory tower unscathed, you have always been worthy. And I just love that.
Yeah. So good.
Mainly because I related to Carmilla a lot. Yeah. So that, like, literally, I know I literally texted you. I opened the book and I was like, I can't even get past the dedication right now. Like, the dedication, though. Like,
so good. I loved it. There wasn't one part of this book that I disliked, even though I fiercely disliked the characters. That doesn't mean I didn't like the book. I loved it.
No, because that's part of it. Like, you have to dislike something. Like, and characters that I dislike make the book better. Like, if I liked everybody, it would be boring. I don't want to like every character of the book.
Exactly. So I think in terms of, like, what I rated the plot, I'd probably say like a 4 or 4.5. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. I would say, are we doing overall or just the plot?
Just the plot.
Plot, I would say 4.5.
Slay. All right, let's get into spice. Let's talk about the spice.
Okay. I loved it.
I agree. I think did we get like a complete total of 2 sex scenes? Is that correct?
I mean, we kind of did with the like the party. That was, I think, the most, right?
Yeah, so chapter 21 was the public sex where Laura squirted all over Magdalena's duvet. And I think we also got in chapter 23 when Laura ties her ribbon around Carmilla's hands and makes her put her hands above her head.
Yes, on Lafontaine's bed.
Yeah, so I think they were 2 like main spice scenes we got. But then there were so many like what would you call it? Like the
tension, like the
tension.
the exploration and the tension and that like just like kind of like
and it just like burned through the book and you were like, oh
yes.
my god. Like you definitely
like if they don't do this right now.
right now.
Yes, that like
like when
I love that though. There's nothing I love more than a good tension.
Yeah, agreed. In the lake, or when they got naked, and you could just feel how much Laura wanted Carmilla.
Oh, and they were so close, and then the scream happened. I was like, oh, you.
Typical crypt keeper bullshit. I'm telling you. I think a lot of what made this book spicy and like just really, really good tension-wise was just Laura's character finding her sexuality. Like we knew from the get-go and from Laura's inner monologue that she was freaky, and from what she'd read and from what she'd discovered through just reading and research and erotica, she liked to be bossy and she liked to be dominant, and those were things that she wanted to explore. And I just found that contrast so interesting, how she had never done anything, but she had so much sexual pent-up frustration.
Oh, yeah.
Give it to me, girl. I loved it.
Oh, I loved it so much.
Yeah, I think for, like, spice-wise, I would probably say, like, it wasn't that spicy in terms of, like, if you want, like, full sex scenes or if you're really looking to have very descriptive sex scenes. Like, I don't think that is S.T. Gibson's vibe. I don't think that's what they like to do as an author, just based on what else I've read. They more prefer vibes.
Yeah.
But I think all in all, like the tension and the frustration and the chemistry between Carmilla and Laura, and even the chemistry between Carmilla and Lafontaine, it made the book incredibly spicy in that sense. So I think in a spice sense, I'd probably give it like 2 chilies out of 5 chilies. But like, I wouldn't say that doesn't detract from how beautifully spicy and delicious the book is. So it's full
because it is. It's all about that tension. It's not really like smutty. It's spicy.
I loved it. Okay, now the pace. Now, I know that I'm biased when it comes to pace of sapphic books because I'm urged on by the prospect of seeing women fall in love. So, like, where others, like, I know that there are girls who will race through romance books because they just love the prospect of the love and the tension and the spice between a man and a woman. That's how I feel about sapphic books, and I will always devour sapphic books a lot quicker than I will with, like, het couples. Ew.
Yeah.
So I actually really enjoyed the pace. I think when we weren't getting storyline, we were either getting these amazing aesthetics, which I thoroughly enjoyed. We were getting tidbits of Delafontaine's life and her insane jealous bouts. So while I hated her, I really did enjoy finding more about her because she was shrouded in mystery and she didn't give a lot away, which obviously made her character more interesting. And then her insane jealous bouts were awful, they were horrible, but they made the book better because you hated her more and you were striving for Carmilla and Laura to be together without her. I don't feel like this book took a break. there are books where I'm like, you could have definitely gotten rid of all of that filler in that book. But for me, this entire book served cunt.
So see, I think that some parts were slow.
Talk to me, tell me.
Towards like the end, I feel like there were just some parts that I'm like, all right, come on, move it along. And not necessarily in a bad way. I just like towards the end, there were just like bits that I'm like, okay, I get it. Like Isis is awful. Like, can we just like kill her now? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it wasn't really like that's coming out really wrong. But like I didn't need so much of the aesthetic towards the end. I didn't need so much of like Delafontaine's whining toward the end. Like, I don't care that you loved her. We get it. You told us that a million times. Like,
Yeah.
At this point, you're a grown ass adult.
Yeah.
And your options are to kill this vampire who just killed your daughter or kill your daughter. Like, come on. Clearly she doesn't love you. You've said it 4 times that you know that she doesn't love you, that she abandoned you, that you had to search the world for her because she abandoned you. Like, come on. Get to the point a little sooner.
Get a clue.
Right. Like, but at the same time, it's like me just hating Delafontaine. So like, was it really the pacing, or was it me just being done with her at the end? Like, come on, get over it. I don't know.
No, I think you're right. I can definitely see how people would find the pacing to be lacking. And I did read reviews where people said that this book was slow in certain parts. So I think I'm just biased. That's why I wanted to say that I am biased when it comes to sapphic books, and I'm always urged on by that romance because it, you know, when you read a lot of het books, I don't feel that urge from certain books, and I get really bored really easily.
I think too, a lot of it was just with her. Like, it wasn't any other part. Like, it was just like her whining. I'm like, come on. Like, but other than that, like, I never kind of felt that way with Laura and Carmilla. I never really felt that way with like other bits and pieces, or when the 3 of them were together. It was just really with like that aspect of it that I'm like, come on, aren't you supposed to be like 100 some years old?
Yeah.
You haven't learned yet. You haven't learned. Like, it just felt very immature, but then again, she was very immature. So it's that like give and take kind of thing.
She was. And I think, again, that's a theme in S.T. Gibson's books, is these powerful beings who sire their younger people. They always end up being not great. Like, they end up being really awful, like, vampires who should have learned through all of their years of life, but haven't, and are just awful. But I definitely I'm glad that they didn't all end up together in, you know, because it could have gone 2 ways. Like, I think for Carmilla's sake, like, she was so attached to Delafontaine, and Delafontaine did love her in her own fucked up way, but I would have been really pissed off if she stayed in the picture.
Oh, yeah.
I hated her. Fucking cunt.
Yeah. Sam.
So I think for me, the pace was probably, again, like a 4.5 out of 5. I liked it.
Mm-hmm. I'd say like a 3.54.
Nice. So overall ratings. Now, I didn't obviously give everything a 5 out of 5, but as a whole, I would rate this book a 5 out of 5. For me, it had everything that I want in a book. I love schoolgirl, first romance, first time being with a girl. It's like one of my favorite like storylines. So for me, this book delivered. It served. I loved every character. I loved the intricacies of each character, and I loved how they were developed not only through words, but through aesthetics and through their actions. So there was a lot of reading between the lines, which I thoroughly loved about the book. So for me, it is going to be a 5 out of 5.
I love that. For me, it's going to be a 4 out of 5. I did really, really love it. For the most part, it was just, like I said, it was just slow at parts, and there were some little things that I could have done without, but overall, I did really love it as well. So I'm going to go with a 4.
Yeah. Love it. I hope you guys definitely give this one a read. I think it's worth it.
Yeah, if you haven't, definitely.
Yeah. And as per usual, if you have or you want to have a chat about it, reach out to us. That is it for this week's podcast. We'll see you guys in a fortnight, which for my American friends is 2 weeks.
Yeah, I
Again.
had to look it up the first time. It's okay.
Again, make sure you follow our socials to keep up on book club in time to see these deep dives. We love having a chat in the comments, so feel free to reach out. See you soon. Love from your good girls.
Bye.
Bye.